So, topic today I have chosen keeping in view our graduate students in philosophy at Kurukshetra University, and I would be explicit in making certain assertions or declarations. So, first thing is that philosophy is in danger. Philosophy is going to be closed in many departments, and already it has been closed in some universities. And a big question is being raised regarding the very relevance of philosophy, very existence of philosophy, at why philosophy is there in the place. What is the use of philosophy? And the question has been raised not merely by common people, but also by academicians, because they believe that philosophy, theek hai, it has been mother of sciences like physics, psychology, political science, and so on. And if you open any book of any science, on the very first page, you find reference to Aristotle, be it physics, be it political science, sociology, psychology, and so on. And I think that is not accidental. That is there because Aristotle, in form of Aristotle, will find a philosopher who is curious to know about the fundamental meaning of the world at two levels, physical level and at psychosocial level. And so naturally his curiosity goes and asks certain fundamental questions. And in modern times, all of these disciplines, they are well-developed disciplines. Physics, psychology, physics become the philosophy of matter, psychology become philosophy of mind, sociology, philosophy of society, and similarly, biology or genetics, neuroscience, they are philosophy of life. So if we take definition of philosophy as the search of fundamental truths, then the question is raised that, okay, फिलॉसफी से शुरुआत तो हुई है, लेकिन अब तो ये म्यूजियम में रखने लायक चीज बन के रह गई है, तो अब ये साइंसेस ने ही सब कुछ ले लिया है, तो अब फिलॉसफी क्यों? तो फिलॉसफी वाकई में ही थ्रेटेंड है. तो डॉक्टर विभा ने जैसे पहले बताया कि वाद विवाद है और ओपोनेंट की पोजीशन को भी हम रिस्पेक्ट देते हैं, बिकॉज द स्पिरिट इज टू रीच एट द ट्रुथ. तो ट्रुथ क्या है ये ए प्रायोरी डिसाइडेड नहीं है, एटलीस्ट इन वन स्कूल ऑफ फिलॉसफी. इसलिए वाद विवाद के थ्रू हम नहीं क्लेम कर सकते, कोई भी एक मनुष्य ये क्लेम नहीं कर सकता कि जो मेरा व्यू है दैट इज द फाइनल एब्सोल्यूट ट्रुथ. एंड सो इफ दैट रियलाइजेशन इज देयर, one can be open for the contrary perspective and to listen to it. If you find it is having some convincing element, then accepting it, balancing your position and so on. So that is the way the dialogue it goes on. तो फिलॉसफी के डिफेंस में थोड़ा सा मैं कहना चाहता हूं और फिलॉसफी के प्रति सेंसिटाइज करना चाहता हूं मैं स्टूडेंट्स को. That's why this talk is there. तो फिलॉसफी का प्राइम डिफेंस मैं ये कहूंगा कि फिलॉसफी कंटेंट के लिए शायद अब इतना रेलिवेंट नहीं रह गया है, क्योंकि as I told earlier that physics, psychology, sociology and so on, they have become well developed sciences, and the utterances which I find in philosophical literature, often they are not much advanced. These sciences have really grown much further. And so one job is that philosopher, because philosopher is not doing any empirical inquiry, experiments or field studies, philosophers are not expected to do. So they are expected to do only theoretical inquiry. So one job for philosopher is to take a big picture, look at the big picture, looking at philosophically relevant insights from various sciences, and to synthesize them, to integrate them, to make a big world view. That's one grand job of philosopher, which I think is specially reserved for philosopher. But anyhow, keeping it aside as of now, right now, firstly, I would like to make a defense of philosophy in the sense of a tool of developing the mind, developing the person, and a tool to do rigorous thinking, a tool to reflect on your life situation and to make it more worth living, to make it more fulfilled life, to make a judicious choice that what matters. Because this is something very important, what matters. Often we are blinded by the voices of others. And if you look at phenomenological existential philosophy of Martin Heidegger and Jean-Paul Sartre, we, especially Heidegger, I should say, we get to a realization that basically the by default mode of human existence is das Man or mit sein. These are technical German terms, which means you have lost yourself, which means you have de self, means the self which is dictated by the voices of others. So, das Man means de self, you are one with the others and you lose yourself, you forfeiture yourself, आप स्वयं को गवा देते हैं. And also mit sein, being with others. You don't experience yourself as an individual. You are actually just having an illusion that you are an individual. Actually, you are always one with others. When you say that I listen to my own sense of aestheticity, this is the dress which I want to wear, you are already aware that what is fashionable nowadays and what will suit on me according to the eyes of others. You're already aware of it. So that otherness is already part of your being. So in my talk, I will discuss little bit of philosophy of Heidegger and Sartre to get to authenticization. So philosophy, as the title of my talk is, philosophy as authenticization of being, which means the by default mode of our existence is inauthentic. It is inauthentic. It is lost. In the very process of when we interact with the world and when we acquire language, when we understand the minds of others, when we follow normativity. So there are certain advantages of these processes and they are inevitable. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप चॉइस से कर रहे हैं और आप अपनी, तो ये इनएविटेबली आपकी चॉइस के बिना ये प्रोसेस चल रहे हैं. आप लैंग्वेज एक्वायर कर रहे हैं, आपको नॉर्मेटिविटी पता है कि क्या शिष्टाचार है, क्या एक्सपेक्टेड है आपसे. यदि आप एक रेस्टोरेंट में जाते हैं या आप एक यूनिवर्सिटी में जाते हैं या अपने पर्सनल स्पेस में हैं, फ्रेंड के साथ है, तो कैसा क्या बिहेव करना है. यू आर ऑलवेज absorbing the otherness, the normativity, norms क्या है. लेकिन इंटरेस्टिंगली फिलॉसफी का काम, एक इंपॉर्टेंट काम यही है कि जो गिवन है उस गिवन को क्रिटिकली रिफ्लेक्ट करना, उसको चैलेंज करना ऑन द यार्डस्टिक ऑफ sensibility, logicality, logical coherence, and so on. And if you find them they are not suitable, they are not making sense, then the job of philosophy is to discard them. No matter who has said or who believes in those norms, or those given norms, I should say. So to summarize or whatever I have said is that by default mode is to be with the others, to have a they self, they दूसरे क्या कहते हैं उसके साथ जुड़ा हुआ हमारा सेल्फ है, उसके साथ इंटरट्वाइंड सेल्फ है. But the job of philosophy, if we are a good philosopher, then it is to transcend that, to go beyond that they self. In the they self, we are inauthentic beings. And to go beyond that is to attain authenticity. तो इसलिए authenticity को प्राप्त करना, that is the purpose of this talk. And I will talk about Heidegger and a little bit of Sartre in this reference, in this connection. तो हाइडेगर की फिलॉसफी की हम बात करें तो हाइडेगर says against the views of Descartes and views of Husserl, his mentor, that there is no isolated consciousness. There is no subject. It's a myth. It's a misconception. He says there is Dasein, being there, or I should say being out there. So human condition or human existence is to be characterized not by an isolated individual consciousness, but by the realization that we are being in the world, where being is intertwined, being is being shaped by the historicity of the community you live in, by the culturality of the community. So your existence is permeated by the historicity, by the culturality, and also by the pragmatic relation with the things, with the world. So being is not something which is pre-existing like an Atman. Being is something which is emerging out of interaction with the world at physical level. For example, the sense, the meaning of hammer is not to be grasped in terms of some objective features, but in the very process of hammering. So when you are doing hammering, that is conferring meaning to the hammer. Even in language, the word hammer is grounded. The meaning of this word hammer is grounded not in objective feature, its length, breadth, or weight, and so on, but in the subjective experiences. And whenever you look at certain things, say a cup or a chair or a table, you always presuppose that how it is being used by others. I mean, I use cup to drink some liquid, not to bang the heads of others, though that can be used as a creative use. But that is not normativity. Normativity decides that this is a device or an instrument to take in some fluids, tea, water, whatever. So you always presuppose others, that it is not only yours personal way of using cup, it is a communal use. So it's an intersubjective, it is involving an intersubjectivity. You look at a cup, you make sense of a cup, it means you are presupposing existence of other beings and a unity with other beings. So that's all part of the normativity, that's all part of growing up and acquiring Dasein. So Dasein is being there, you are out there, you are not isolated consciousness, you are out there in the culture, in normativity, in the historicity, and so on. So Heidegger also talks about something called care, which means that world is existing there not in a neutral manner. World is existing there in a care. You care for the world, which means you make some sense of the world. And there are three elements in the structure of care. One is the facticity, other is the fallenness, and then third is the existence or existentiality. So what is this? Facticity is simply the very fact that you have been born to certain parents in certain country, in certain community, and so on. These are all facts. You cannot change them. You're helpless. Then fallenness is a kind of average everydayness. You have fallen to that average everydayness, the dreariness, the routine, uh, Monday to Friday routine, and then there is Saturday, Sunday where you relax, you watch late night movies or whatever, go to parties if some of you, and otherwise it's Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 job. So there's a routine, and there are certain set patterns, certain normativities that you have to get education, graduate, then get married, bear kids, and so on. So all of these are normatively already decided, and you fall to them. And in that fallenness, sometimes you lose yourself. It's not sometimes that I said it wrong. It is almost always that you fall to that, and in that lies inauthenticity. When in an unchallenged manner you follow the norms of the culturality, and without challenging them, accepting them as if they are the command of God. So that is fallenness, and that involves forfeiture, that involves dasman, they self, and so on. And then third is the existence, which gives you possibility to go beyond them, to reflect on this, and to look at the possibilities which can transcend the given. So it is this existence which herein Heidegger talks about the possibility of attaining authenticity. So here lies the relevance of Heidegger. My reading of Heidegger is that no doubt I read it in two steps. Like in the first step, we have to understand that by default mode of existence of human condition is that it is Dasein, and it is inauthentic Dasein. It is they self. It is four-featured self. गवा दिया है स्वयं को. But the second part is also that Heidegger is not very happy about this situation. He calls it four-feature, and so he says that there is a need to attain that authenticity, going beyond the givens. So to be authentic means exploring the possibilities beyond the given, beyond the given horizons of your culturality or whatever. Anyhow, so in that way, possibility of authenticity is possible. And what is the method, or if I shouldn't say method, how it is to be realized? That is to be realized through one special mood which Heidegger talks about, and that mood is mood of dread, the death anxiety. Now that is something very interesting, that mostly philosophers and commonly people also talk about, they don't talk about death or the dread, because death is something which is very fearful, and that's why we frame certain we give some indirect references that he passed away. We don't say he died, we say he passed away. We don't want to talk about death in a direct manner. But for Heidegger, death is something beautiful. Death is the probably only one way which has the power to make you authentic. When death happens, that recede away, because you realize that you are going to die, and then you make a strong resolution that I will be what I am in true manner. You know, when death will happen, it is only your death. No one else can die at your place. And that is what he talks in terms of nothingness. the very experience of this dread or death anxiety, that gives you experience of nothingness. And so there is a beauty in nothingness, that when nothingness dawns, the world recedes, the infinite chatter, the mindless chatter of the world that recedes, and you attain authenticity. So Heidegger at place says that uh, authenticity and nothingness and the true being, they are actually the same. But anyhow, this is a prescription of Heidegger. And if I reflect on these issues, uh, my view is that you can experience nothingness, though the good example of nothingness would be when you actually experience your deathness, as I coined the term, deathness, that I am going to die. This is not to be taken just as an intellectual concept, but something as an experiential concept, experiential realization, not just a concept. So when this dawns to you, then you stop caring for the world and you attain your authenticity. Well, that happens rarely, and it doesn't happen by your choice. You can make a choice that, okay, tomorrow onwards I will wear only red shirt, but that experience is not in your control. When it will happen, it will happen. One good example in our Indian scenario is that of Raman Maharishi. So Raman Maharishi attained enlightenment through this very method, when he very vividly imagined that he is going to die, and his dead body is lying, which is going to be burned, converted into ashes, and then this deathness, this dawns in a real experiential, existential manner, and then some change happens. But well, this is very rare. So probably in a diluted form, we can imagine this nothingness in some other manner, like when your mother or your wife, with whom normally you may have some bitter relation or nagging relation. So she is always nagging, and then you are complaining about her, and then she goes away for a week, and then in her absence you experience that nothingness, and in that nothingness you paradoxically experience more of her presence. That is also another interesting thing. So another way can be that if you go to some alien place, say you are North Indian and you go to South India and live there alone, where no one knows you, again you experience some kind of nothingness, and then I think some transformations happen in your being. Anyway, now moving to Sartre. Sartre is also concerned about authenticity, and his book Being and Nothingness deals with these things. And he talks about bad faith. So bad faith is a kind of self-deception, and he gives certain vivid examples. For example, a boy and a girl, they are sitting in a, say, canteen, and they are having some intellectual discussion, and in the heat of discussion, boy holds the hand of girl, and girl knows what is happening. It's a romantic interaction, but under the garb of intellectual discussion, she doesn't retaliate or doesn't raise any objection. So that's a kind of bad faith. You are actually capable of understanding, but you don't let it come to your awareness. That's one example. Another example Sartre gives is that of a waiter who is working in such a committed manner as a waiter, as if he has been born to become a waiter and nothing else. So Sartre says that he has potential to go beyond merely a waiter. He may have aspiration to become a doctor, and then he can take responsibility and alone. Maybe he has to do extra work, he has to be more committed. So Sartre is radically saying that you are condemned to be free. And that's also a very interesting thing. Normally, if we are free, we think as if we are going to enjoy the life. But Sartre says freedom is a burden. Freedom is a burden. It is not something that you are only enjoying. And he says that don't blame your genetic, your genes, bad genes, or your bad upbringing. If someone says that I was born in a poor family, so I didn't get good education, so I couldn't attain success. So Sartre will criticize him. Sartre will say that you can always go beyond these conditions, whatever conditions you are in, and simply you have to make a strong commitment. So all of these things are pointing towards authenticity in Sartrean philosophy, that don't blame on your genes or your circumstances or conditionings and so on. So Sartre doesn't believe in Freudian unconscious, nor he believes in the behavioristic conditionings which shape the behavior in a deterministic manner. He says you're always free, and so no excuse, take responsibility, take ownership of your life, you're condemned to be free. So these are all views of Heidegger and Sartre in nutshell, and my point is to make you a good philosopher. I believe everyone is a philosopher in a maybe loose sense of this term, because everyone reflects. But normally our reflection remains confined to a pattern given by the normativity of the place you live in, and you don't go beyond that. So a good philosopher will be who will dare to go beyond that as well, go beyond those patterns, and so evolve. And if a person doesn't evolve, in long run he will perish. If a community doesn't evolve, in long run it will be destroyed. And that is the way we have evolved. In evolutionary sense, we have evolved from being a monkey to a Homo sapien, because we have not lived in a very friendly, cozy environment. We have gone through very hostile environment where either we get hunted down or we have to hunt. So in those kind of conditions, we had developed our cognitive abilities, and we have reflected. What is the difference between humans and other animals? Animals don't reflect, they just move by instincts. And when you are moving by instincts, they are sometimes intelligent, but they don't foresee the future. They don't reflect on the past, that what lessons they can draw from the past. And herein lies the role of history. And they don't anticipate the future, that this thing has happened today and it can happen again tomorrow. So I have to reflect, I have to anticipate, I have to foresee, and I have to make planning and make work accordingly. So Heidegger also says that your experience, your existence is not merely in now. Your now is always affected by the projections in future and projections from the past. So your now is never now. Anyhow, so herein lies the, in one sense, kind of essence of being human. That if we have reached to this state of Homo sapiens from being a monkey, that has been possible because of reflection. And the point of being a good philosopher is to be a better reflective being, daring to challenge the givens of the society, and if needed, to go beyond them. So one beautiful example is that of Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar. तो सती प्रथा थी हमारे यहाँ पे, women education ban थी, पर्दा प्रथा थी. They were all givens of the culture, and they were challenged by philosophical reflection by a few individuals. And the same thing is required. And rather, I believe that philosophy has to be made a mandatory subject in schools from 9th and 10th standards. If not mandatory, at least it should be as one of the optionals, like we offer them computer science, music, physical education. So why not philosophy? Rather, philosophy is more important than all of these, because it is required for the evolution. So if you don't evolve, you will perish, because the world is always changing. The world is a precarious world. It's always uncertain, always insecure. If we don't grow, if we don't evolve, ultimately we'll be perished. Something similar is happening with philosophy department itself. Philosophy is also stagnant. And so philosophy also needs to grow, needs to evolve, and which in my personal view means to do naturalized philosophy, means to study sciences and borrow insights, philosophical insights from them and integrate them and mesh them with philosophy and try to answer classical philosophical questions in terms of those insights from sciences. In that way, philosophy department itself needs to evolve and to maintain its value and existence. And we all are philosophers. We need to grow. We need to develop this philosophical instinct, and in that way, not only at personal level but at the nation level also, we will grow. The whole humanity will grow. And what I'm saying is already being practiced in Canada and in Europe and in Australia also. I mean, those developed countries, they have already incorporated philosophy in their school syllabi. So yes, so that's all for today's talk. I'm done. Thank you.